The rain didn't fall. It stabbed. And she stood alone in it, the wind tearing at her veil like it, too, couldn't bear the sight of her. Around her, the guests had vanished like ghosts at sunrise. All that remained were toppled chairs, shattered wine glasses, and a preacher who wouldn't meet her eye. Her white dress clung to her like regret. A long gash ran down the side, red blooming through lace. Whether from the fall or her own doing, no one asked. The man she was to marry, gone. Fled the moment he saw her scars beneath the makeup, when a storm struck and washed away the careful illusion she had painted for him. But she didn't chase, didn't scream, didn't beg. Instead, she reached down, picked up her bouquet from the mud, and turned toward the woods where no path existed. A single man stood in the distance, beneath the shadow of the chapel cross. He hadn't moved, he hadn't looked away. He saw her, not the mask, not the flesh, her, and he stepped forward. Subscribe now, because tomorrow's story will haunt you even deeper. You'll need it. But before that, let me take you to the day it all began. Dust rose with every footstep she took, curling around her like the town's judgment, dry, persistent, impossible to shake. Wicket Hollow wasn't much. One main road, 2 saloons, one of which doubled as a brothel, a schoolhouse long abandoned, and a chapel so crooked it looked like God himself had turned away from the place. It wasn't the kind of town you arrived at on purpose. You ended up in Wicket because life spit you out somewhere worse. That's how she came. Her name was Clara Bell, and no one said it out loud anymore. They whispered it, half pity, half curse. She walked with a limp in her right leg, dragging the foot just a fraction too long behind the other. A childhood fever had twisted the bone, made her unsteady. Her left cheek bore a scar that even time had failed to fade, an ugly roped thing stretching from temple to jaw, as if God had marked her as unfinished work. She wasn't deaf, not completely, but close. One ear was good enough to catch laughter, when it was cruel. The other rang like a bell that never stopped tolling. Most days, Clara swept the steps of the chapel, though no preacher had stood there since the last one went mad in the pulpit. She did it for the quiet. The sweeping let her pretend she was brushing away more than just dust, maybe old memories, maybe names she no longer wanted to remember. Children weren't told to avoid her, but they did. Dogs barked when she passed. And the women? They clutched their husbands just a little tighter. She'd once been engaged. A long time ago. A boy named Ellis from the next town over. Soft-spoken, good-hearted. He gave her a ribbon once and told her he didn't care about the scar, said it made her look like a fighter. 3 weeks before their wedding, he rode off for trade and never came back. They found his horse wandering near the canyon. No saddle, no blood, just gone. The whispers blamed her. Said maybe he saw her for what she really was. She didn't fight the rumors. What would be the point? Clara had learned that truth didn't hold much weight in a town that preferred stories, and hers had already been written. Every morning she walked to the well at the edge of town with an empty pail. No one else used it. Said the water tasted strange, bitter somehow. But she didn't mind. It kept the others away. It was there one morning, when a small voice broke through the silence. "You always come here alone." Clara looked up, startled. A child stood nearby, no more than 8, freckled and barefoot, with wild curls tucked under a too big hat. "You ain't scared?" Clara asked softly, her voice hoarse from disuse. The girl shrugged. "Mama says you're cursed, but Mama says a lot of things." Clara gave a rare, small smile. She's not wrong. "I like cursed things," the child said, then wandered off like she hadn't just cracked something open in Clara's chest. That night, Clara lit a candle she hadn't touched in years, not for prayer, not for hope, just to remember what warm light looked like. In town, people spoke of her like she wasn't there, or worse, like she wasn't real. "She's the kind of pretty that's broken wrong," one man once said, loud enough that she could hear it, just soft enough to pretend it wasn't for her. "She talks to herself," whispered another. Clara never corrected them. never said the name she sometimes murmured under her breath was her sister's, Maren, who had died young before the fever took its toll on Clara, too. Before the town had decided only one child was worth saving. Some nights she stood at the edge of the ravine just outside Wicket Hollow, where bones and secrets went to rest. She never jumped, just watched the stars fall over the cliffs and wondered how they managed to burn so far from everything. Once, long ago, she had laughed freely, had sung with a voice that turned heads at harvest dances. Now, she spoke only when she had to, and even then, only in the stillness. Because in Wicket Hollow, stillness was safer than sound. She had no friends, just a cat with half an ear and 3 good legs who came and went without loyalty. She named him Reverend and fed him scraps from a tin. He never judged her, and that was more kindness than most people ever gave. The truth was, Clara had grown used to her ghost life, to the silence, to the echo of her own breath in empty rooms, but deep down, buried where even she couldn't reach, was something still breathing, still hungry, not for love, not anymore, for something else, something closer to justice. If this is breaking your heart already, you haven't seen the worst yet. Tap subscribe. I've got another truth waiting for you tomorrow. Yawindi changed before the stranger arrived. It swept in from the west, cooler, heavier, smelling faintly of pine and something else Clara couldn't name. Not quite smoke, not quite storm, but different enough to stir the air in Wicket Hollow, like someone flipping the page of a story long stuck on the same chapter. She noticed it first on the chapel steps. The wind lifted her veil of silence, carrying voices from the saloon and creaking signs that usually hung dead in the heat. It made her uneasy, not for what it brought, but what it might awaken. The stranger came riding a black horse slick with trail dust, its hooves striking like flint on the cracked earth. He didn't ride fast, didn't ride like a man running from something, but not like he was searching either, more like he belonged to the in-between. He was tall with broad shoulders and a coat too fine for a place like this. Dust clung to him like Wicket was trying to claim him, but the man didn't seem to notice, or care. Clara saw him first from the well. She stopped mid-draw, water sloshing over the edge of her bucket as she froze. Not at his face, but at his eyes. The kind that saw too much, the kind that didn't flinch. He looked right at her, not through her, not around her, at her. She looked away. By dusk, the stranger had taken a room above the saloon. The usual chatter stirred like hornets shaken in a jar. "Drifter," someone hissed over cards. "Gun for hire," another offered. "Too clean, to be honest," said the blacksmith, who trusted no man without visible calluses. Clara didn't ask who he was, but she kept watching. He showed up at the well the next morning, not early, not late, just when she was there. "You always fetch water this time?" he asked, voice gravel low but not unkind. Clara didn't answer. She glanced at him, nodded once, then turned back to the rope. "I heard the other well's dry," he added. She gave a slight shake of the head. "No, folks just don't like the taste." He smiled, not mocking, not pitying, just amused. Maybe they're not thirsty enough. It was more words than she'd shared in days, maybe weeks. She handed him the bucket without thinking. He took it gently like it was made of something breakable. Their hands touched, nothing dramatic, no thunder, no flash. But she noticed. He came back the next day, and the next. He never pushed her, never pried. He just asked small questions, commented on the way the sky reddened before rain, the way the wind in Wicket Hollow never seemed to stop, and Clara slowly let herself answer. She told him how the chapel used to ring bells on Sundays until the preacher started hearing voices in the walls, how the saloon piano only played 3 notes before it died mid-song, how no birds landed in town, just circled overhead like they knew something no one else did. He listened like she was telling a gospel. She asked his name eventually. He said, "Call me Luke." Their silences grew longer than their words, but not awkward. Full. Sometimes they just sat, her on the chapel steps, him leaning against the rail, watching dust spiral in the golden light. She found herself waiting for his shadow each morning, heart stuttering when it finally appeared, and yet she didn't let herself hope. Not really. Not yet. But Wicket Hollow noticed, and Wicket Hollow never let the strange or the tender survive long. The barkeep spit on the floor and muttered something about cursed women and soft men. Mrs. Adler, who hadn't spoken to Clara in years, made a point of walking on the opposite side of the street when the two passed. And one night, Clara found a dead crow nailed to her door. Luke saw it before she did. He pulled it down, jaw set, tight. They're scared of anything that doesn't fit in their little world. Clara just stared at the blood smeared across her threshold. They think I don't belong in it. You do, he said. Simple. Solid. She wanted to believe him. What if someone saw you for who you are, not what you carry? Subscribe. One day that story might be yours too. Trouble came 3 days later. A rider thundered into town with a sheriff's badge and questions about a man matching Luke's. Description: said he'd gone missing near Clearwater, said there was blood, said someone saw a man with a black horse riding off toward the canyon. The townsfolk didn't ask if it was true, they assumed. Clara found Luke at the well again, jaw clenched, hands dirty like he'd just finished burying something. You need to go, she whispered, voice shaking. He didn't deny it, didn't lie. I can't yet, he said. Not until I know you're safe. She blinked. You don't even know me. I know enough, he said. I see what they don't, what they refuse to. She stared at him a long moment, then stepped back. Then look at me, she said. She pulled the scarf from her face, let the morning sun fall on the jagged scar. He didn't look away, didn't flinch. He stepped closer, and with a hand calloused and kind, he brushed a strand of hair from her face. I said I see you, he repeated, and for the first time in years she believed someone might mean it, but shadows were gathering. The wind wasn't just shifting, it was warning, and the past, both theirs, was galloping closer with every heartbeat. Clara didn't know if he would run, didn't know if she should trust. But when the sun dipped low and painted Wicket Hollow in gold and fire, she stood beside him, and that, for now, was enough. The snow came early that year. Wicket Hollow, which hadn't seen a white winter in nearly a decade, woke to drifts that blanketed the saloon steps and buried the chapel fence. The wind was sharp enough to draw blood, and the cold crept through walls like a ghost returned for unfinished business. Clara knew the weather was a bad omen. She felt it in her bones, in the limp that ached more fiercely than usual. Even Reverend, her three-legged cat, had vanished days ago, as if he sensed the shift before she did. It started with whispers, then stares, then silence. Too much of it. Something was brewing. Luke had been gone for 2 days. Said he was headed to the ridge to check on something. Didn't explain what. She didn't ask. Wasn't sure she had the right. Still, she felt his absence like a bruise. The invitation came with the dusk. A folded piece of paper slipped beneath her door, scrawled in harsh, hurried ink. The chapel. Come alone. Midnight. She knew better, but curiosity, or maybe hope, made fools of the broken-hearted. She wrapped her coat tighter and went. The chapel was dark, cold. The pews creaked like they remembered pain. Clara stepped inside cautiously, the only sound her boots, crunching ice crust near the door. Then the doors slammed behind her. A hand struck her from the left, open palm, forceful, meant to humiliate. Her head snapped sideways, cheek stinging. Laughter echoed from the shadows. 4 men stepped forward, and Key recognized them all. Cole, the sheriff's cousin.
Malcolm, who lost a farm to frost. Lenny, whose brother once begged her for love. And Reverend Halston, who used to preach sermons until the voices in the walls grew louder than God. Town's got rules, Cole sneered. And you've been
breaking 'em. I haven't. You think you're better than us? Lenny spat. Think your little limp and scar give you the right to sympathy? She's cursed, Reverend muttered. Draws trouble like flies to rot. They circled her. Where's your ghost lover now? Malcolm grinned. Gone, huh? Took one look at your real face and ran. She didn't speak, didn't cry. But her silence only made them angrier. They grabbed her, shoved her to the chapel floor. Cold, damp stone bit into her skin. Cole held up scissors. We're gonna fix you, he said. They didn't cut her, but they cut her hair. Fistfuls of it. Long chestnut waves torn away like sins being purged. By the end, her scalp was raw. Her pride gutted, her coat soaked from melted snow tracked in on their boots. Then they left her. Alone. Lights flickered once from the saloon down the hill, then died. She ran, out into the snow, into the trees, didn't know where her feet carried her, only that she couldn't stay. Her breath came in shallow gasps, burning her lungs. Branches whipped her face. Her boots sank with every step. Finally, her legs gave out. She collapsed by the edge of the creek, face first into the snowbank. Her fingers burned with cold, then stopped feeling altogether. The scar on her cheek throbbed as if the humiliation itself had found a voice. She didn't cry, but something inside her broke. Quietly, the kind of break you don't notice until you're too far gone to fix it. She didn't hear him approach, didn't feel his coat being laid across her back. Only when warm hands lifted her, gently, slowly, did she realize someone was there. Luke. He didn't say a word. Just gathered her, close, cradling her like something precious and half lost. His breath misted against her ear as he whispered, I've got you. She wanted to resist, to scream. But she was too tired, so she let him carry her. He brought her to the old mining cabin by the ridge, lit a fire, wrapped her hands in cloth, laid a blanket over her shoulders and sat beside her on the floor. Still, he didn't ask what happened, didn't pry. She spoke first, voice hollow. They tried to take what little I had left. Luke's jaw tightened. They can't touch what matters. She looked at him, her hair uneven, face scraped, body trembling. Look at me, she said. You really think there's something left worth saving? He didn't answer, not with words. He just reached into his coat and pulled out a ribbon, faded blue, weathered. This was my sister's, he said. She died in a fire. They called her cursed too, said she brought it on herself. Clara blinked. I never got to say goodbye, Luke continued. But she used to tell me, some people are too bright for towns like this. They don't burn out. They just burn alone. He held the ribbon out to her. For when you're ready. Clara took it, not because she believed in hope, but because it was the first thing offered to her without cruelty in a very long time. They stayed in the cabin that night. He made her tea. They didn't touch, didn't confess anything more. But when she woke in the middle of the night, chest tight with leftover fear, he was still sitting beside the fire, watching the flames like they were telling him something he'd waited his whole life to hear, and for the first time in years. Clara didn't feel alone. The next morning, she walked back into town. Head high, eyes forward. The chapel loomed on, the hill, its doors still ajar, wind whistling through the rafters like some holy thing had finally abandoned it for good. People stared. She let them. Luke walked beside her, not shielding her, but with her. Let them whisper. Let them curse. She'd found someone who didn't flinch when he saw the ashes. He saw the gold buried beneath. It started with a fence post. Clara drove it into the thawing earth with stiff arms and bruised palms, the echo of the mallet ringing through the hills like a gunshot. Luke watched her from the barn they were salvaging. One wall half rotted, roof slumped like an old man in prayer. It wasn't much, but it was theirs. They'd bought the land cheap from a widow who swore it was cursed. Clara didn't flinch when she said it. She just nodded and handed over the coins. She knew something cursed could still grow beautiful things. The townsfolk kept their distance. After what happened at the chapel, and the way Luke stared down the sheriff when he came asking questions, Wicket Hollow learned to keep its mouth shut. Clara didn't care if they approved. She was building something real now. Each morning, she rose before the frost melted. She mended fences, patched windows, and watered the stubborn garden plot that refused to bloom. Luke fixed the stable, restored the well, and found a pair of wild mustangs worth gentling. They didn't speak much of love, or futures. But in the way he handed her coffee with both hands, in the way she left the cabin light on for him when he rode late, it was there, in the quiet, in the fire. One night, after hauling stone for the hearth, Clara stood back to admire their work. The wind whipped her skirt around her boots, hair now short and sharp around her jawline, but she didn't hide it anymore. Luke came beside her, wiping sweat from his brow. "Doesn't look like much." "It's perfect," she said. He glanced at her, and for once she didn't look away. "You know," he murmured, "most people don't get a second chance at this, at anything." "I'm not most people," she said, and he smiled. But the past wasn't done with them. It came riding in on a red bay horse, wearing a deputy badge and a bullet scar under one eye. His name was Rourke. Luke tensed the moment he saw him. Rourke dismounted slow, brushing trail dust off his coat. "Heard you were alive, Lucas. Couldn't believe it until I saw your ugly mug." "Turn around," Luke said. "Now that ain't polite." Rourke's smile didn't reach his eyes. "You still owe answers for Clearwater. 3 men dead, 1 woman missing, and you vanish like smoke." Clara stepped forward. "He didn't kill anyone." Rourke raised an eyebrow. "And you are?" "I'm the one who saw what this town didn't. What you probably won't either." Luke shifted, body tight. "This isn't her fight." "Funny," Rourke said. "Neither was Clearwater, but it still bled." He dropped a slip of parchment into the dirt, an arrest order. Luke didn't pick it up. That night the fire burned high inside the cabin. Clara stared into it, jaw clenched. "Is it true?" Luke sat across from her, hands folded. "I didn't kill them. But you knew them." "I did." He swallowed. "They were bounty hunters. Found a woman chained up in the canyons. Ran from some hell of a husband. I helped her get away. They came after us." He stared at the flames. "I fought back. 2 of them died. The 3rd might have shot himself, but no one will believe that." Clara didn't speak for a long time. Then, "I believe you." He looked up, startled. "I've been blamed for things I didn't do," she said. Watched people lie with smiles on their faces. She moved to sit beside him. "I believe you." And for the first time since he came to Wicket Hollow, Luke let himself breathe. They kept building, stone by stone. Not just the cabin, but something bigger. Plans for a horse ranch, a warm fire for travelers, a place for the ones the world cast out. Clara found herself laughing. Again, small, quiet laughs at first. Luke started humming tunes without knowing he was doing it. They carved new names into the barn door. L+CC. But the paper Rourke left stayed buried in the back of Clara's mind. So did her fear. What if it was all temporary? What if love was something only borrowed? Then one night, a storm rolled in like a freight train, lightning crashing over the ridge, rain falling sideways. The barn door flung open and one of the mustangs escaped, wild-eyed. Clara grabbed a lantern and bolted out into the chaos before Luke could stop her. She found the horse near the cliffs, nostrils flaring, hooves slamming mud. She moved slowly, steady, talking softly. "I know what it's like to want to run, to fear the hand that reaches for you. But not this one. Not anymore." She reached out. The horse snorted, but didn't. Bolt then, footsteps behind her. Luke, drenched, panting. "You're insane," he shouted through the rain. She laughed. "Takes one to love one." They wrangled the horse back together, thunder cracking behind them like applause. When they returned to the cabin, soaked to the bone, Clara lit the fire with shaking hands. Luke wrapped her in a blanket, held her close. You scared the hell out of me, he whispered. She looked up. I've never felt less scared in my life. Tension peak insert. You've come this far with her. You felt that, didn't you? Subscribe. I want you to meet someone else tomorrow. Someone just as forgotten. The next day, Clara stood at the ridge, watching the sunrise. Luke came. Beside her. I could run, he said. Tonight, head for the border. She nodded. But if you run now, you'll always be running. He turned to her. And if I stay? She reached into her pocket, pulled out the arrest order, then tore it in two. Then we make a life. One fence post at a time. He stepped closer. This is what I want. All of it. Even the hard parts. And, with dawn washing gold over the land they were stitching together, he kissed her, not with desperation, but with fire. Together, they turned toward the cabin, their cabin, and behind them, Wicket Hollow watched, but it no longer owned them. The first spring sun cracked through the clouds like forgiveness pouring down. Wicket Hollow shimmered in puddles and promise, the frost finally surrendering its hold on the earth. They'd nearly finished the ranch. Just a few more fences, a little more trust, and one final choice. Luke stood in front of the general store, the town square quiet except for creaking signs and a few curious eyes peeking from windows. He hadn't been back since the night Rourke rode in. Now, he waited. Boots planted, hat in hand. Clara approached slowly from the chapel road. Her hair had grown enough to tuck behind one ear. The scar on her cheek shone pale in the morning light, but she didn't try to hide it. She hadn't for a while now. She stopped in front of him. You sure? She asked. They don't forget easy here. I don't need them to forget, he said. I just need to say it. He turned to the small cluster of townsfolk gathering at a distance, the sheriff on his porch, the blacksmith wiping soot from his brow, and the widow who'd sold them the land standing with arms crossed. Luke raised his voice. Name's Lucas Miles. Some of you know what they said I did. Some of you don't care. But what you all need to know is this. He took Clara's hand. She saved me. Not the other way around. She gave me a reason to stay. To build something real. And I'd rather be hated with her than praised without. A hush fell. Then a slow, reluctant nod from the blacksmith. And the widow. She tipped her chin. That was enough. They married under the sycamore tree just beyond the ranch. No priest, no pews. Just a sky full of stars and a wind warm enough to carry. Vows farther than any church bell. She wore a faded dress the color of dusk. He wore a vest with a missing button. Reverend the cat returned that morning, sat right on her lap while she braided wildflowers into her hair. Luke made her a ring from a horseshoe nail and a silver coin. She said it was perfect. Later that year, the ranch saw its first traveler, a woman with a broken wagon and a story behind her eyes. Clara helped her fix the wheel, fed her stew, and let her stay the night in the barn. When the woman left, she cried. Clara didn't ask why. She just held her hand as she did. Sometimes they rode the fence lines at dusk, fingers interlaced on the saddle horn. Other times they just sat by the creek where the snow once nearly swallowed her whole. Now it ran clear. And the scar on her face? Luke kissed it every morning like a blessing. They never put up a sign, but people found them anyway. Widows, runaways, lost girls with burned letters in their coat pockets, men who limped too much to run anymore. They came in twos, in threes, and Clara welcomed them with warm bread and warmer eyes. One autumn evening, as the wind bent the grass and painted the hills gold, Luke found her sitting by the fire with a child in her arms. Not hers, not yet. But the girl had no name. So Clara gave her one. Ivy, for something that grows where no one expects it to. She tucked the girl close and whispered, "You're safe now." Luke stood behind her, hand resting on her shoulder. He didn't say a word. He didn't need to. Closing lines. She was never a curse. She was someone's miracle all along. Subscribe, and let me introduce you to the next miracle tomorrow.